he was one of the first athletes and in general, one of the first public figures that was announced with having the virus. So it was really scary. I mean, it's scary in general, but at that time it was really scary. And I think Kevin was kind of dealing with the unknown, but he was fortunate in that he never developed any symptoms. He isolated himself for the full 14 days, and he's in quarantine, obviously still like the rest of us, but he was fortunate to get through it.
So what about this question of what the NBA should do and whether they can actually be playing in the long term with no fans? Where do you come down on this?
I'm torn a bit. I think it's tough. It's tough on everyone, like it is in every business in the world right now. I think yesterday you saw Chris Paul, who's the head of the Players Union, said that players would need about 3 or 4 weeks to get back in shape. And that's assuming that we get off in the next month in any way, shape, or form. And then you have to kind of take into question what would the effect be on next season. So, I think that players are committed to doing it. And I think that the league and the owners are working towards trying to find solutions. But it's still hard to press go on any of it until we know more as a society in general.
Rich, clearly within the NBA, there's certain players involve a revenue share with the league. What are the fears over how big a hit that might be? Or is it not too big a concern given the level of pay overall for most players?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard that as a concern. I mean, obviously, I think it was announced players would be taking a reduction across the board. And obviously everybody is being compromised in this situation. So in no way, I think, should anyone feel bad for the players. But, the players have many other ways of generating revenue. And I think, if anything, players are more concerned with how they can really give back right now. You see quite a few players kind of at the forefront trying to be as philanthropic as possible. So I don't see the revenue share as a real concern right now.
You said they have other ways of making money, Rich. How do you think about whether this hurts Kevin or any other player's brand, the fact that they can't play, and what it's going to mean in the long term for those partnerships and sponsorships?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to us. It hasn't hurt us. If anything, from a content perspective, I think athletes have always been some of the more equipped at using social media and talking to their fans through the different platforms. And I think a lot of athletes, and us especially, have reached out to our portfolio companies and our brands and figuring out how we can kind of collaborate with them, getting out their message in terms of how they're helping in particular communities. And then if there's messages that they want to get out just overall about the state of their company, and we're here to support them all. And then, we have brands that want to kind of incorporate their messaging right now in the platforms because we do get such a big audience. But, it really depends a lot on what athletes want. Some athletes aren't probably focused right now on what they can do from a brand standpoint and worried more about just the everyday stuff we're all worried about. But these athletes have such big platforms that, there's still an opportunity to continue to create content and storytell.
On that point, Rich, you've been significantly involved in making various sports documentaries and other sports-related TV shows that don't rest on live sports. There'd been a growing trend of those anyway in recent years, and clearly some are being rushed to market of late. How much do you think that picks up the slack for what viewers and sports fans want to see? And how quickly can they be produced? Will there be enough to fill the demand?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's tough. I think from a documentary standpoint or for digital content, obviously there's technologies that allow us to utilize them and create content fast. Scripted series, for instance, we had a scripted series with Apple that was in development, and that's been halted. But, I think in general, I think the content like that we can create through our social platforms is stuff that fans are craving. Even with the excitement around like Michael Jordan's The Last Dance, the excitement around the draft last night, you can see how much the stoppage in live sports really kind of represents like how serious it is that's going on in the world right now. And I think people are craving any of it. So there's a lot of different ways athletes can keep creating. We have a documentary that is coming out next month that we've been finishing over the last 6 weeks while we've been in quarantine. And it's just more of the kind of scripted stuff and the studio stuff that I think is jeopardized.
So beyond the content stuff, you also own stakes in companies at 35 Ventures. How else are you pivoting in this environment?
Yeah, I mean, we're not looking very actively at investing. It's more so about communicating with our portfolio companies. I think a lot of them have messaging of what they're trying to do right now in the midst of this. And I think it's our job as, as a strategic and savvy investor and a partner to help them get their messaging out. And that could be in the form of creating content, which we're doing with some of our brands. That could be, just in the form of using Kevin and our company's social properties to get the messaging out. If it was a company like Acorns or a fitness company that we invested in that has brought their entire class online. So just trying to be a partner that can help in any way. And, and that's regardless of the time we're in, but now more than ever, I think it's our duty.
Do you expect anything, Rich, to permanently change when it comes to sports?
I do. I mean, in the short term, I think societal changes will affect, what our interest level is in terms of attending games. I think there's been AR and VR technologies that have been in development that we're slowly rolling out that you may see sped up, especially because we're looking at fanless arenas and stadiums for the foreseeable future. So I think trying to figure out a way to engage the fan at home with more and more offerings, I think you'll start to see that. I'm hoping that in time and when there's more confidence throughout all of society and different therapeutics and eventually a vaccine is introduced to the world, that, being in a stadium, being in an arena will never be replicated by being at home. So I hope all that comes back. But in the short term, there will definitely be some real changes.